Number 42 asks you to find all of the roots of the following polynomial. My suggestion for this one would be graph it first. And then if you see it cross at an integer value, so a whole number, I would go ahead and we're going to end up using synthetic division. You could try to factor it first. I don't think that's really going to work out so well because if you tried to factor it by grouping, 6 and 25 unfortunately don't have anything in common, so factoring by grouping is really not a good option. So we have to try something else first. So your first option would be to graph it and see if you can find a root and divide it out. So once you graph it in your calculator, the easiest root I think to pick out when you look at that graph is positive 4. Yeah, you can see it crossing at two other places, but they don't look like they're crossing at whole numbers, so I'm just going to start with the 4 to begin with and see where that takes us. At least we know that none of our answers will be imaginary, since we can see all three roots. And since this is a degree 3, it's only going to have up to 3 roots, or it's going to have exactly 3 roots. So synthetic division, you're just taking the coefficients of your x, or of your terms. So 6, negative 25, 2, and 8. Alright, so synthetic division, you're going to go ahead and drop down that first term, 6, and then 4 times 6 will give you 24. Add those two together, so you get negative 1. Do the same process again, so 4 times negative 1 is negative 4. Add those together, you get negative 2. And then finally, 4 times negative 2 is negative 8, giving us a remainder of 0. Now again, that remainder of 0 is really important. If for some reason you do synthetic division and you don't get 0 there, that's kind of a problem. That 0 kind of just confirms for us that this 4 is an actual root or a solution for that equation. Alright, so what we're left with is 6x squared minus 1x minus 2 is equal to 0. So remember, whenever you do synthetic division, since we started with an x to the third and we divided out one time, that means that our power down here is going to decrease by 1. Now, it's kind of an assumption, but I mean, when you look at that graph, since you see it crossing at two other spots on the x-axis, hopefully those two other roots are rational, meaning that they're a fraction or a whole number. Well, we know it's not a whole number, but so that we can actually divide this, or not divide it, use factoring. Now, once you get it down to an x squared, you can try to factor it, or an x squared, the quadratic formula will always work, but it only works on the x squared equations. But I'm going to try factoring on this one, because hopefully that'll be a little bit faster. Alright, so we have 6x squared minus 1x minus 2 is equal to 0. So I'm going to go ahead and split the middle. So remember, you're going to start by doing 6 times negative 2, so negative 12. I always write out the pairs. Alright, so we're looking for two numbers that are going to multiply to give us negative 12, and at the same time add to give us a negative 1. So it looks like our pairs are 3 and 4, with the 3 being positive and the 4 being negative. So if I go ahead and split this middle, 6x squared plus 3x minus 4x minus 2. Out of the first two terms, we can take out a 3x, leaving with us a 2x plus 1. The second two terms, we're going to take out a negative 2, leaving us with 2x plus 1. So the final factored form of this is 3x minus 2 and 2x plus 1. Once you get it factored, really all you have to do is take each factor, set it equal to 0, and solve each one. So for this first one, we're going to add 2 to both sides, divide by 3, which gives us x equals 2/3. Over here, subtract the 1, divide by 2, so negative 1/2. And then don't forget, at the beginning we used 4, so those are our 3 roots. Now, because this SLO test is going to be multiple choice, I mean, something like that, hopefully, I mean, you know, because time might be an issue, hopefully something like that you might not have to solve all the way. Based on your options, your multiple choice options, you might just be able to eliminate down to your final answer, or at least eliminate down to 2 options just by graphing it and looking at it.
Made with Doodlecast Pro.